You go.
Hey,
How you doing?
good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
You're sideways. There we go.
Um,
Perfect.
we got 5 seasonal days of winter. Yeah, in Buffalo, New York, that's more like 5 months of winter, but
Yeah, I was just telling him we just had snow today. I'm in New Mexico, so we don't get a lot of snow, but we usually get like a few snow days a year.
gotcha. Yeah, we get all the seasons here in New York, but I mean, I'd rather get all the seasons than a dry year. So
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we finally got connected.
yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Technology is weird sometimes.
Yeah,
All right. Well, did you want to introduce yourselves for anyone who may not know who you are?
yeah. My name is Philip Ferran, aka Philly D Bass, over in Buffalo, New York. I've been a founding member of the music scene, going back at least 15 years plus. Started off with a major band. We did a lot of stuff going. Um, the band was called Skinbound. We pursued a lot of different tri-state areas. We got signed under a small B label project on Cyrene Records, which helped open the doors for a lot of college radio play and a lot of fast buy-ins for national tours and so forth. But that was about 15 years ago, give or take. And then now, actually part of two projects. One is called Hardon, and the other project is called Beneath the Wayside. Totally two different elements of music. One is more of your metal slash punk, more of your OG suicidal tendencies, and then the other project is more of your traditional new rock, Canadian rock.
Very cool. Yeah, I enjoyed both of them, and I like how they each have their own unique sound. So very cool to be able to be a part of two different bands with those different sounds.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely been an experience. We both projects we rehearse once a week, and in the beginning it was kind of like I had to reset my brain, going from one practice, going, okay, I gotta switch over to this kind of groove. But I mean, my mentality as a musician is music is music. It doesn't matter what the genre is. It's got a good groove or it doesn't have a good groove. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's cool that you can take those different influences and put them into the different bands, and that way not everything just sounds the same.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a fun process. And then I also have to remind myself as a bass player that, if I'm playing a groove in one project, I got to remind myself I cannot use it in another project just because certain grooves follow. If you understand key structure and so forth, certain walks are a certain walk, and there's no way around it. So,
Right. Well, obviously both bands have different sounds. Who are some of your musical influences?
oh geez, my musical influences. I had a diverse childhood growing up. I had two older brothers, so I had one brother that would listen to the old like Chicago and bands off of that era. And then I had another brother that would listen to like Guns N' Roses, New Order, Depeche Mode. So I'm very diverse as far as where my back where my back history is on music. I guess as far as like some of the bands that I just keep on going back to, one of them is from Buffalo, New York, and that's Every Time I Die. I know they're not together anymore, but those guys definitely influenced the scene. Um, those guys, I would say White Zombie. I always use Dimebag Darrell from Pantera as an example that a lot of musicians are out there trying to impress another musician, but if you look at Dimebag Darrell, the dude can take three notes and make a platinum hit. So yeah, it's very diverse as far as where my music background is.
Very cool. Yeah, Every Time I Die, definitely an awesome band. Did you want to give a little backstory on how both bands got started?
Yeah, actually, I'll start off with the first band, Beneath the Wayside. I was in a previous project And during that time, I would come up with different riffs. I'm a bass player by nature, and I'd come up with certain riffs on guitar, and I'd bring it to the table, and they would kept on getting pushed to the wayside. And because of that, one of my buddies does recording, and he goes, "You should really record that, turn that into a song." And it evolved from that. Our first original song that we wrote called Roscoe, I came up with just the basics of the bass and guitar for that. And I actually pursued some musicians that I knew from the scene that were actually, it's a funny story that I pursued the drummer at the time when I was looking for a drummer. And when I posted an ad looking for a guitar player, the guitar player from that old project responded. So I kind of got a drummer and a guitar player that were both in a previous project together. So it kind of worked out really well because those two already had the chemistry with each other. So that worked out really well. We did have a vocalist, and it just didn't really pan out in the beginning. We kind of booked our first show, and after our first show, we realized he just wasn't what the project needed to support a role as a vocalist. So we parted ways with him, and then during my time frame with a previous project, one of the local bands that made a good name for themselves, 12 Gauge Tragedy, they were like a metalcore. The vocalist posted something that he was looking to get back into music. So I reached out to him, and Nick's been with us since. He kind of added the element that we needed, when you're listening to music, you just know something either fits or doesn't fit. And he fit right off the first bat of practice and tryout with him. So that's the project that's more of the new rock, the Canadian wave. So we've been, it kind of set us back about 6 months because during that process, we had to go back into the studio. We had a couple songs, but luckily we weren't that far advanced with our music that someone had to come in and learn someone else's vocals. He was able to just put his own interpretation of what he felt needed to go where it went. So that was the positive part of that. But as far as trying to invest to get us out there on the scene, we probably lost a good 6 months to 9 months, but we knew going into it that we had to reinvest our time into just restructuring our backbone. So now we're up and running. We completed the studio, got a couple songs done. We released those last year, and then we're going back in the studio this year to release a couple more. We have some show dates coming up. So that's pretty much where the first project came in. And then the second project, Hardon, the drummer Jimmy Link, a little over a year ago, he posted looking to just do some free jam. Jimmy Link actually came from more of an OG scene. He was the drummer for a band called Grave Descent. So it was more of a death metal type. So him and I, we jammed together a couple times, and we just jumped right away. And so instead of it just being something fun to do here and there, we actually started pursuing looking for other musicians to collaborate with, to actually build on. And when we did that, we went through a couple different, we went through two different guitar players, I believe, and then we went through one vocalist just because it was not fitting what we were trying to set out to do. We weren't going to settle, pretty much, to say that in a nice way. And then during the process, the original project that I was in that was actually signed, our secondary vocalist and keyboardist actually reached out to me and said, I'll do vocals for you. And I was like, awesome. So because of that, everything just kind of fell into place. In that project, we just started playing shows. We just played our first national show last week with 6 Feet Under over in Rochester, New York. And the funny part is if you listen to our sound, we're not death metal, we're not metalcore, we're not in one particular genre, but the shows that we've played so far, we're diverse with our sound that we blend in and mesh well with most of the genres out there. So the show went well. We had a good turnout, a good response for what we're doing. So that's kind of where we are now. So
Very cool. Yeah, I know a lot of shows lately, they don't really stick to one genre, which is cool because you're seeing bands that you wouldn't normally see. Kind of like, for an example, last night I went to see Silverstein with Thursday, and they're both kind of like the metalcore, but then they had this like emo band from the UK that opened up, and then like this bluesy band from Canada. So you kind of get all different genres thrown in there, but it works. And you might get fans that you wouldn't have normally gotten if they don't normally listen to your genre.
Yeah, we were kind of nervous when we were offered the show for 6 Feet Under. I remember our guitar player looked at me, he goes, "Dude, we're not death metal." And I go, "Dude, I don't care." It's part of one of the mentalities that we actually have for Hardon is, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't like us, fuck you. Because there are so many bands out there that are so worried about other people liking them that, at the end of the day, it's not about impressing the musician. It's about impressing the naked ear. Our goal overall, I could say this for both of the projects, but our goal is for the naked ear to walk away tapping and humming, the verse or chorus of a song. That's what we're about. It's not about, like I said, I stress this so much, but either you're impressing a musician that wants to be like Dream Theater that's playing more notes in one walk than most people playing a whole album, or you're out there to just make good music. And I guess it's hard for some musicians to actually understand that and find their place in music.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's so cool about the metal scene too, is like there's so many genres and subgenres within, but like everybody seems to be, for the most part, pretty open to different kinds, and not super judgy, like, oh, you're not death metal, you can't play this show. So I think it definitely works out in the end.
Yes, absolutely. Being like I said, so far we've had a good response. We're having a lot of fun doing what we're doing, and we're just keep on looking forward to the future with what's going on.
Yeah. If you're not having fun, then why do it, right?
Exactly.
And how many instruments do you personally play?
My main primary instrument is bass. I can play some guitar, I can play some keys, but I stick to bass because once you realize what you can bring to the table, you kind of just need to stick with it. So for me, I just play bass. I mainly play a 5-string bass. I do have 4-string basses as well, but I like the 5-string just because with the range that you can pull off of a 5-string with the low end.
Okay. And what are kind of like the creative processes like when you guys are making new music with either band?
Well, that's the beauty of it is we all bring our ideas to the table. We actually haven't, and this is a lucky thing, is we haven't had that. I wrote a song, you guys got to play it. It's come up with a riff. We kind of have that mentality of, if you got an idea, bring the idea to the table. Worst case scenario, the band votes on it and goes no, or the best case scenario is what happened is, I like that riff. Let's stick with that riff and let's work on that and progress to actually have a full foundation of a song. So, and I can easily look at you or anybody else and say our music is written by the band, the whole band. I mean, the only person that writes their own stuff is a person with their own instrument. The vocals does their own thing, guitar does its own thing, the drummer does his own thing, and the bass does his own thing. The only time we really have to really suck it up and deal with things is in the studio when we're listening to something going, you know what, that really doesn't go there. But until you get in the studio, you really don't hear that. So, but luckily everyone's been a good team player so far with the pursuit of how we're writing.
Okay. Yeah, it's good that, nobody's overbearing or anything like that, because some bands, like you said, come in and one guy wants to take over everything, kind of control, and that never really goes over well. So it's definitely a good thing when everybody collaborates together.
Yeah, it's I've had my fair share of the Nazis in the bands, and those are the bands that usually they have a revolving door of musicians. If you want to be, my mentality is if you got one person running the show, writing the material, then you're really not doing original music. You're playing someone else's music. That makes you a cover band. Because if you got one person, I don't care if it's original music, if you're playing someone else's material because they wrote it, then you're just a cover musician.
Yeah, that's true. Who would your dream collaboration be with?
Oh, geez, as far as like as a whole project, um, you really got me on that one. I would say for vocals, I would do Mike from Faith No More, just because his diversity of his art of how he does vocals is just from every spectrum possible. Um, I guess for percussion, there's a improv jazz band that a lot of people actually have known now as Medeski Martin Woods, the drummer from that project. And as far as guitar player, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably say Scott from Anthrax.
Okay.
That's definitely a big a big enjoyment for me through the years. Is Anthrax has just been one of those bands that they just, once you hear the first riff, you know who it is.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a song that you've written that means the most to you, and why?
I would say the first song that comes to mind is actually the first song that made me make the choice to start Beneath the Wayside, and that song is called Roscoe. Because it meant a lot to me that, I really came up with something that I just listened to over and over, and it forced me to realize that I need to do more than just pick up a bass in a band. I need to actually contribute more, and that song in particular definitely helped me realize that as a musician, you either got to sit back and let someone else drive, or you have to pick up that wheel and go with it.
Right. Is there a song from both bands that is your favorite to perform live?
Oh man, I would say I'm going to pick a song from each project because that wouldn't be fair. That's the struggle with being in two projects. Is I've made a goal and a commitment to myself that both of my projects that I'm in, they have 100% of my energy and they have 100% of my motivation and the same drive. Neither band takes over the other band. I guess for Beneath the Wayside, my favorite song to play live is Bleed You Dry. Just the energy and the drive, if you listen to that, it's just, I love it. It's just a great song to play live. And then with Hardon, it's the first song that we kick off our set off with. And that's the first song that we actually went in the studio and recorded is Your Rights. It's straightforward, it's in your face. And regardless of what kind of music you listen to, you're going to walk away tapping your foot to it.
Awesome. Very cool. What would you say is the funniest or craziest thing that's ever happened at a show?
That I've played at,
Yeah.
I would say recently, and that's been through the years, Frank, our vocalist with Hard On, he actually does wrestling also. He likes to do backflips on stage, so we have to make sure that the front of the stage is cleared because he likes to do his backflips.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Both vocalists from both bands, they're very emotional on stage. There's too many. You've been to so many shows where you just look at the musicians, like you can get the nails out of your feet, you can move around, and I feel that, you know, as a performer, people go to live shows to see a performance. They don't go to a show just to listen to music, and I feel that a lot of bands have lost that through the years. They just stand there. I understand some genres of music, you really got to focus on your instrument, but you got to put a show on. I mean, it's part of why we do what we do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like the shows I go to where they're moving around on stage and interacting are definitely a lot more fun than shows where they just stand there the whole time.
Yeah, I guess, probably some of the best experiences I had from playing a show, sharing the stage with other bands that I was able to learn from was we were on the Summer of Sin with Dope. And I think it was in Erie, PA, and it was the first show we got to play with those guys. And I was floored. I was amazed that these guys actually choreographed their shows. And it's not like they had these extreme light rigs and everything else, but that's where I learned that, you move during the verse, you stand still during the chorus. There's each part of the song you got to bring to life. And just from watching those guys play, that actually helped me out drastically with live shows. Because up until that point, you stand there with nails in your feet. You know.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, dope's definitely a good one to model after. Do you have a pre-show ritual that you do?
Uh, Pray to God that I don't break bass strings. Um, I guess my pregame, is just like anything else in life. I just go through my checklist of making sure that I've got everything ready to go. But that's a given. I really don't have anything particular. I do always make sure that I'm a big coffee drinker, so I always make sure that I have got my coffee ready to go so I can just enjoy myself and have fun on stage. I feel that, if like you said, pregame, if you pregame in whichever way you need to, you're setting yourself up to visualize how you're going to perform on stage. So I guess putting myself in a mental place where I know what I'm going to be doing when I get on stage, what I'm going to be doing on each song. I guess that's my pre-ritual, just getting the legwork done out of the way.
Yeah, that's a good one. What is the best advice that you have ever been given?
Best advice I was ever given was just have fun with it. I guess be yourself. If you're a performer that you have a gimmick you dress up as on stage because that's part of your gimmick, then that's great. But if not, if I can't wake up and put something on and go to a show because that's what I woke up and put on, then you're faking it. I guess just have fun with it and be yourself on stage. And I guess my advice to other people would be, when you're on stage, it's not a race. Breathe. You don't have to go from one song to the next song to the next song. Talk to people. I'm not saying, stand up on stage and be a storyteller for 15 minutes in between songs, but, enjoy the moment, wave to people, high five. It's part of the experience. There's a lot of people in that crowd that they're probably looking at you going, I want to be that one day. I want to be on stage. And I think some of the best shows I've played are the dive bars because you're that much closer to the people that are there. And one thing that I guess a lot of people don't realize as musicians is people are there because they want to see live music. So if they're already there, they're there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. What do you do for fun outside of music?
Music, music, and music. You know, being in a band, it never ends. There's some people in bands that only contribute their instrument and then they call it a day. There's some people that don't practice outside of meeting up for practice, which, that's a big downfall for a lot of musicians. You got to take the time outside of band practice. But as far as what I do outside of actually being in a band is I try to pick up my bass as much as possible, promote how I can. But for me as an individual, what defines me is um, I love coffee. So I guess coffee houses is one. I do a lot of running. I do a lot of ultra. I've been getting into ultra running the past few years, so that's something I've been building up on, and that's kind of another area in my life that I realize you can't fake that stuff. There is no off button when you're pursuing, better health. Um, and as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, you only get one shot in this world. You only get one body. You got to take care of it, and so that's something that has been a goal of mine because I don't want to be in my 50s, hunched over, not in shape. I want to be able to enjoy life as much as possible. So running, running a lot of calisthenics, things like that. I work a normal job, so I get that nighttime. I do have kids, so I get to enjoy that as well. I have a wife. So pretty much open-minded, a lot of hiking, things like that.
Yeah, you definitely gotta, have those outlets other than, the music, but definitely revolves around that for sure. What was the first concert you ever saw as a fan?
First concert I ever saw as a fan, oh geez, I think going back, it would have been Metallica.
Oh, wow, that's a good first one.
Yeah. I believe it was Metallica, and that was when they had Jason on bass. I really wish I would have been around for when Cliff, because my opinion for that band is Cliff made that band. I mean, a lot of people disagree, but Cliff was it. You know, you could hear the difference in the writing between the albums with those guys. But that would have been my first band that I seen live. And as far as what band I've seen the most, I would say Slayer. I've seen Slayer 12 times in my time, and they just, you know, one thing I could say about Slayer, Kerry King said it on an interview, is you may not like us, but you've heard of us. And that's kind of where my mentality is with the projects that I'm in. You know, a lot of people look at me and go, where the hell did you come up with the name Hardon? And I'm going, you know what? Yeah. So
Take a guess.
yeah, and I pitched the names of both bands to the members at the time, and it sold, so we just stuck with it. But to get back to your question, it would have been Metallica. That would have been my first show. And it was funny because I really wasn't into that type of music either. I was more into the original alternative music. So to go from, you know, Depeche Mode and The Cure and the 10,000 Maniacs and all that stuff, to go to an actual metal show at the time, I was like, what in God's name am I listening to? So
Yeah. Yeah, to take it back to Slayer, I just saw them at Aftershock this past October, and like they're still like one of the best bands I've ever seen live. So they're still bringing it.
no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like I said, for me to say I've seen Slayer 12 times, you know, it was because of Slayer I got to see Fear Factory as much as I did, because they took Fear Factory under their wing for most of those shows. But I remember it was at the I know you're not from the area, but there was an old venue called the Fun House over here in Western New York, and the venue had two stages. So when you first walk in, there's a smaller stage, and then they had a big venue hall. And Head PE was playing on the small stage. And I remember right at the end of one of the songs, the vocal or someone out in the crowd screamed, "You guys suck!" And I just remember the vocalist from Head PE. Everyone cleared away from the dude. The vocalist from Head PE pointed right at him. He goes, "Yeah, you may think we're suck, but who's on tour with Slayer, bitch?" And you know, I was just like, God damn, like that's real right there. And you know, it's things like that you know, you may not like certain bands, but a lot of people don't understand what it goes into just to get to that point. You know, a lot of people think you get signed, you're magically, you don't have to work, you don't do these things. That's not the case. You know, it takes a lot of hard work for these bands that a lot of people look at to get to where they're at. And, you know, and that's one of the reasons why local music is so important, because every band that you listen to one day used to play these dive bars in front of bartenders. And it's just, it's a struggle.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many talented musicians out there. It's, you know, it's hard to get noticed nowadays with the way everything goes. So that's, you know, one of the main reasons I started doing what I do, just to, you know, obviously I don't have a huge platform, but any way I can help promote, you know, bands that are upcoming, I do my part, because, you know, the music scene's important, and all the local bands, no matter where you are, you know, some of the best bands, even better than some of the signed bands out there. So
Yeah, you're right. I can agree with you 100%. There's local bands that, you know, musically they're more talented, and it's just, you got to be in the right place at the right time. You know, it's not like it was back in the day where there was A&R reps going out to these shows to check out local acts. It doesn't work that way anymore. These record companies are listening to the first 5 to 10 seconds of your songs, even if they listen to it, and if they're not hooked within the first 5 to 10 seconds, that's it. They move on to the next thing. So
exactly. Well, I know you mentioned some upcoming songs and upcoming shows. Do you have any dates yet, or?
yeah, and my mind is drawing me a blank right now. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, I need to check on the internet, but yeah, both bands, we've got a couple shows going on. We're going to be back. Hardon's going to be back in Rochester In March, we're going to be supporting Hate Grenade. They're out of Erie, PA. And then for Beneath the Wayside, we've got 2 shows coming up. We've got, if I'm not mistaken, March 10th. March 10th, we're going to be in Niagara Falls, New York. You're probably better off looking at the dates to correct me on that. Yeah, both bands have a couple dates that are locked in and committed. Right now, we've got everything locked in up until May, and then we're looking to start booking going into the summertime. And then we've got more studio. Both bands have studio time coming up in April and May. So we go through Watchman Studios with Doug White. He, if you're from around this area, he's worked with every national act under the sun. He's worked with the majority of local acts. He's been doing it long enough. He's got a good ear. He knows what sounds good, what doesn't sound good, and he doesn't candy coat anything. If he listens to something going, he'll let you know. There's some guys out there that, yeah, it's great. You went to college, you know how to press record on something and mix and master, but you really got to have a good ear and you got to know what you're doing to be able to produce something. So
Awesome. Well, I definitely can't wait to hear what's coming out with both bands. Did you want to let people know how they can follow you, support you?
yeah, both bands were on all platforms: Pandora, Spotify, iTunes. You can check us out like everybody else under the sun. We're on Facebook. We kind of steered away from doing websites right now just because with how social media works, the websites are great, but until we're actually at that point where we need to have everything managed through a website, we're using the social platforms. We find it more personal. We do most of our activity on Facebook just because it seems like that's where most of the activity is coming from. But right now, let's see, Hardon, we just released Your Rights not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, and we're going to be releasing another track called Dedication. That's actually going to hit all your platforms on February 9th. Beneath the Wayside, we're going to be going back in the studio, so new music will be coming up from that project going, I believe, in May or June.
Awesome. Very exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully, if I'm ever in your area, I can catch a show. But otherwise, definitely let me know when the new stuff comes out and I'll help promote it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thank you. You too.